Hey, it's Mike from the Run Testers. In this video, I'm going to be talking about two watches. The first is this, that is the Garmin Forerunner 55. And I wanted to see how the 55 compares to the Coros Pace 2. Now, obviously, collectively as a team, we have reviewed the Coros Pace 2. It got a very good review. It's one that we think is a really strong running watch. The 55 is new to Garmin's Forerunner range. We have quite an extensive kind of first look review of it. We will be doing a multi-tester review of it as well soon, so that will be on the channel in the next week or so. But I wanted to get a sense of how these watches compare, basically because they're kind of at that affordable running watch end of the market. They're similar price. I thought it made sense actually to just see what they're capable of, how they compare, what the key differences between the two are, and essentially which one I would probably recommend if you had that kind of money to spend. So yeah, I'm going to take you through what the key differences between these watches, how they got on in my running tests, and yeah, whether you should go for the Forerunner 55 or the Coros Pace 2. Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about design, and ultimately these watches kind of use same materials. You're kind of getting a similar experience, kind of soaks up a similar amount of space on your wrist, I would say, as well. So we'll start off with the case sizes. So both offer 42mm cases. So with the Forerunner 45, which the 55 kind of essentially replaces, there was two size options. Now the 55, you're just getting one. In terms of displays, they're kind of similar, kind of those kind of transfective displays. So all about kind of offering kind of good viewing angles and visibility in all light conditions, but also being able to deliver good battery life overall. So actually the Pace 2 has a slightly larger screen, or a larger amount of screen kind of space to kind of view your data. On the 55, you've got a little bit more kind of bezel around that screen, so it feels a little bit smaller essentially. But essentially for me, you know, it's not something that I really noticed a difference in. I think, you know, they're small watches, they're light watches, and I think they're good enough in terms of kind of viewing your data when you're out running. In terms of navigating those screens, you're getting physical buttons essentially. So obviously you're getting more physical buttons on the Forerunner 55, and it's kind of pretty much kind of a standard kind of typical setup you get on most Forerunners. On the Pace 2, obviously you're getting just the two buttons. You're getting this kind of twisting button that Coros has kind of sided with. Now, I think in terms of navigation, absolutely fine. I think the more I've kind of used kind of Coros's watches, I think the one thing I find in terms of running and in terms of that kind of twisting button is that when you kind of want to quickly kind of pause a session or stop a session, you know, the screen will lock itself automatically. It's something you can kind of adjust anyway, but ultimately if you've got that set up, it can be a bit slow to kind of stop that session or pause a session. So when I did a race, when I finished, I kind of, you know, on the Garmin, you can kind of hit that stop button, and that's, you know, you're done. With the Pace 2, you're kind of twisting to unlock and then pressing to pause the session and finish and save. So it's a minor thing, but I think, you know, in terms of just like quickly getting through your sessions, I kind of probably preferred what you get on the 55 in terms of interacting with the screens and the watches themselves. So one thing I wanted to talk about the design is the backlights. And I know obviously, you know, it seems like a really simple thing, but obviously if you're running at night, what kind of visibility you get. And truth is, they're both pretty good from that point of view. The Coros has a kind of dedicated kind of night modes to ensure that you have kind of good visibility of the screen. Backlight, you also have a dedicated backlight button on the 55 as well. For me, I didn't have any really major issues in terms of what you get in terms of that experience of running at night with these watches. So if that kind of visibility at night or kind of low light is a concern for you, both of these watches kind of offer up similar kind of experience on that front. So in terms of the straps, it's quite similar in terms of the size. You can remove straps on both of these watches. It's pretty similar in terms of how you do it. You kind of pull these kind of little pins across, and that kind of releases the bands. So if you want to change up to something else, that's absolutely fine. I've had the nylon bands on the Pace 2 and a kind of a silicone one on the 55. They've been fine, comfortable. I've had no kind of issues wearing them. That's running with them, or day to day wearing them. I've slept with these watches as well, so and I've had no issues there from that front. So in terms of overall comfort, I say these watches are light, comfortable watches to wear. They're small watches. If that's something that you're kind of looking for from a running watch, then these both kind of serve you really well. In terms of which one I would kind of pick over the kind of design perspective, I probably slightly favour the 55 a little bit more. I probably just like the kind of it's a little bit kind of, it feels a little bit slimmer to wear. They're both kind of polymer cases. You're getting the same thing in terms of that. You're getting the same things in terms of kind of waterproofing as well. So on that front, I don't think there's a huge amount there. You're getting a little bit more screen on the Pace 2, but ultimately, I think you're getting what you want from a running watch at this price. A screen you can see easily. One that's easy to kind of navigate and use. A strap that's comfortable, and ultimately, I think both of these watches are going to serve most people well from a design perspective. So in terms of running features, the core bases are covered here. So you obviously got built-in GPS, and you've got that wider satellite support to kind of offer more accurate outdoor mapping. You've got modes for track runs, dedicated for modes for treadmill running as well. You can create interval sessions on here. You can create or follow plans, create workouts. So in terms of those core basics or what you'd expect from a running watch, those things are kind of covered off. So it's really the software extras that might sway you to go for one over the other. So we'll start with the Pace 2, which I think the kind of standout thing from a kind of running perspective are the kind of Evo Lab kind of insights. So we've covered that in our kind of partnership video. So these are kind of richer insights in terms of helping you kind of guide your kind of training and kind of offer you a better insight into how you're performing. And the Pace 2 has all that. It's that is a big sell in terms of kind of running features, I think, which you don't really get that level of detail on the Forerunner 55. Now, what you do get on the Forerunner 55 are some kind of features that are filtered down from other Forerunner watches. So things like the improved race predictor, the recovery advisor, daily suggested workouts. You're also getting kind of predicted times that you can kind of put in a specific distance, and it will kind of work out when you should finish that distance basically in a run based on your kind of tracking history. You are also getting Garmin's Pace Pro pacing strategies, which was kind of debuted on the Phoenix and now has started to work its way into other watches. Now that brings us into one feature you don't get on these watches, which is kind of mapping support, or that kind of ability to upload routes. Now, while Pace Pro kind of relied on, or a little bit, kind of slightly relied on that kind of mapping support you get on other watches, it's really about pacing and about your split. So actually that feature can still kind of work on this watch. So if you like the idea of kind of Pace Pro and the idea of helping you strategize for races, then you have that on the Forerunner 55. Now, for me personally, I think the extra running software on the Garmin is a little bit nicer. What I will say, kind of things like app support or third-party app support, these watches will work with things like Strava and Training Peaks. For the quickest sync in, the Coros for me just syncs quickly to Strava if that's something that you care about. But obviously you've got that connectivity there with the Garmin as well. Garmin, the 55 also has full Connect IQ support now. So if you want to download apps and data fields and widgets, you can do that now, which you couldn't do in the 45. Pace 2, you don't really have an app store front. It's everything that's kind of there in the app itself that you kind of have access to. That's kind of growing and that's changing and it is getting better. But if the idea of having that access to Connect app store, being able to kind of add extra features to your watch appeals, then you're getting that on the 55. So from a software perspective, those are the kind of key things or key running features where these two watches kind of differ. Me personally, I think the software extras on the 55 are a little bit nicer, but if you care about kind of more advanced kind of analysis of your running, that's what the Pace 2 is going to give you, and that's going to be the advantage to get the Pace 2, I think, over the Forerunner 55. So in terms of the run tests, I think my take on these two watches is that they're pretty solid in terms of that run tracking experience. I've done a mixture of runs with these, so I've kind of done bunch of training runs and just kind of go out easy runs. I've done a race with both of these watches as well, so I've had that kind of context in terms of how they perform in the race conditions, and generally they've been fine. So I'll start with the race test, and it was a 10k race, and in terms of capturing that race, the Garmin was actually closer in terms of the accuracy and kind of getting close to that 10k. The Pace 2 was a little bit over, but in terms of the actual kind of metrics that it captured, the key things that I would look at, things like average pace and the things that would help guide me in terms of performance, were generally fine. In terms of kind of viewing the watches during those races, there's no real issues there to report as well. They're obviously slightly different UIs or interfaces that these two watches use, but ultimately they're easy to kind of navigate, to glance at, see how well you're doing in a race. So from that perspective, they've been really good. And on kind of the steady training runs, the accuracy has been pretty good for me. Nothing I've seen to kind of worry me that these watches are totally off on that front. In terms of things like heart rate monitoring, I think it's a similar story on both of these. I think, for steady runs, the optical heart rate monitors are generally fine, and I've used them against Garmin HRM Pro chest strap, against MyZone's heart rate monitor chest strap, and Wahoo's Ticker X as well, and generally they've been fine for the steady runs. Now, the kind of high intensity stuff, interval stuff, also kind of in the race test as well, things kind of start to you start to see the issues of discrepancies in the data. So for instance, on the 455 in that race test, I had the Pace 2 paired to the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap, and it was kind of 5 BPM off in terms of that max heart rate. And similar the other side with the Pace 2, when I was doing interval testing against a chest strap, it was slightly higher with that data. Generally, it's fine, but the good news is that you can pair both of these with heart rate monitor chest straps, and I would suggest doing that if you want the best data. It's what we say generally for most watches, and it's the same story I think here. It's worth investing in a heart rate monitor, particularly for kind of run tracking performance, and if you care about that heart rate and accurate heart rate data. So in terms of battery life, the raw numbers say the Pace 2 offers more. So essentially, whether that's in standby mode or kind of smartwatch mode, or in GPS battery life. So you're getting more on the Pace 2. Now, in terms of actual running performance, I would say kind of an hour's worth of running, it's kind of 4 to 5% on the Forerunner 55 in terms of drop off. On the Pace 2, it's maybe slightly less, maybe 1% less than that, but essentially, you're not getting a huge dent in battery life kind of for most runs, I think, and these are going to hold up. But if you want more battery life, based on my experience, the Pace 2 offers more. I think it holds up better in standby mode when you're not tracking. Obviously, there's kind of a bit more going on in terms of what the Forerunner 55 is kind of monitoring during the day, and also things I think like notification support seems to hit the battery life a little bit more than it does on the Pace 2. So yeah, battery life is something that you care about. For me, the Pace 2 offers more. I'd say it's kind of 5 to 7, maybe 10 days on the 55. On the Pace 2, it's probably a few more days more than that, but essentially you're getting watches that will give you a week's worth of training comfortably. It's just the Pace 2 will comfortably get you more between charges. So should you go for the Forerunner 55 or should you go for the Pace 2? Now, based on my experience, I think there's some key areas that might sway you to go for one over the other. So I think the first one for me would be the extra running software that you're getting on here. And I think There's a little bit more on the Forerunner 55 that I think actually for a wider range of runners will have more appeal. I think Pace Pro is a really nice feature to have here. I think, you know, everyone loves the kind of race predictor, and I think now that Garmin has changed the way they kind of deliver that race predictor and what it's based on, it feels a little bit more reliable. Daily suggested workouts, again, feels like a feature for beginner runners or someone who's lacking the kind of knowledge of having that structure around what to do with running. And from that perspective, along with things like Garmin Coach, that feels like a nicer fit, and I think that's what's going to make the Forerunner 55 for me appeal. Now on the Pace 2, I think for me it's going to be around those kind of more advanced analytics that you get through EvoLab, which I think, you know, depending on how much that matters to you, that is going to be a reason from a software perspective to go for this. In terms of the core running experience, I think it's pretty similar across both. I think I got a little bit more in terms of the accuracy on the 55, but I don't think there's a huge amount between it. I think the other reason you'd go for the Pace 2 is the battery life. So I think, based on my experience, it holds up longer in between charges, and if that's something that you care about, then the Pace 2 is going to deliver more on that front. So that would be another reason. In terms of design, you know, it's a personal thing. I think I'd probably prefer running with the 55, but I think the Pace 2 is a perfectly comfortable watch to run with, and I kind of like some of the nicer designs and the new looks that they've kind of introduced recently. So you have some options in terms of looks and colours, if that's something you care about. But if you're looking for a light, comfortable watch, a screen that's easy to see, and kind of most conditions, both of these watches are going to serve you well. So for me, if you're on the Pace 2, I think the key things are going to be the battery life. I think those kind of more advanced kind of analytics that you get. On the Forerunner 55, I would say some of those extra kind of running software or features that you're getting that I think are a bit more geared towards beginners, and I think are really nice. And generally, I think the interface and interacting with the Forerunner 55 feels a little bit nicer as well. But again, not much in it. So those would be the key things that I would say kind of separate these two watches. But ultimately, you know, I've run with both of these over the last few weeks. They've been really nice watches to run. I haven't had any major issues or real concerns using these watches. I think they're going to serve people really well. I just think those are the key areas which I think may persuade you to go for one over the other. Me personally, I would probably go for the Forerunner 55, but I think, you know, the way Coros kind of approaches their watches and the way they kind of update their watches and bring new features quickly to its watches, I think that's going to be a reason to kind of look at the Pace 2 as well. So yeah, that is my kind of take on how the Forerunner 55 compares to the Coros Pace 2. So that's our take on the Garmin Forerunner 55 against the Coros Pace 2. Now, if you've got any questions about our testing or any questions about any features on these watches, let us know in the comments. If you want to see other comparison videos that you want us to pull together with other watches, let us know about that as well. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos. And yeah, see you for the next Run Testers video.